Okay, it's 11:30. We are going to get started. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know we are facing challenging times at the moment, and that's exactly why it's excellent that you're spending a few minutes with me here at lunchtime on the West Coast, thinking about 3 ways construction leaders can step up and seize opportunities in turbulent times. So, obviously, things have changed quite a bit in the last month. And this is your opportunity in the next hour to rise above all the stuff that's going on at the moment. It's going to still be there an hour from now. It's interesting. I was chatting with my wife this morning, and we were specifically talking about the things that we can control at the moment. And the problem when you go onto the internet and you check out all the stuff that's going on with the coronavirus and the unfortunate impact that it's having in the world, the problem with that is that there's so little of that really that you have a lot of control over. And when there's many things that are causing you anxiety that you have no control over, it's extremely discomforting. And so the purpose of today's webinar is to help us to rise above all of that and to think through the things that we do have control over, and as leaders do our best to gain control over those things and work through the challenges that we're facing. So with that in mind here today, I want you to cast your mind back to 1 month ago. If you were to characterize how things were going a month ago in terms of your business, I'm naturally a pessimist, and I've been waiting for the shoe to drop for the last 5 years as far as construction's concerned. And I don't know about you guys, but it seemed like everything was going so well. Everything was just awesome. And then all of a sudden, we got a stark reminder that life isn't just up, 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 and up. Okay, and there's this great quote. It says, "People are born for trouble as readily as sparks fly up from a fire." Now, let me ask you, does anyone here know where that quote comes from? People are born from trouble as readily as sparks fly up from a fire. Let's have a look here. Does anyone know where that quote comes from? We'll get you a little prize, a literature prize, if you can figure out where that quote comes from. You can't Google it, though. If anyone's Googling it, that's cheating. You've got to be able to just to come up with it off the top of your head. It's kind of an obscure one. Let's see what we got here. Robin says it comes from the Bible. Okay, so where it comes from, guys, is it comes from the book of Job, right? The book of Job, the earliest dates on the book of Job are 6,000 BC, okay? So we're talking about 8,000 years ago, right, that this book was written. And everybody knows that life is full of trouble, but yet we tend to forget. When things are going well, we tend to forget that life is full of trouble. And so here's another quote from ancient wisdom. "The true man is revealed in difficult times." And I really believe that. Who we are as people is truly revealed when the challenges and the difficulties come in. So when trouble comes, think of yourselves as a wrestler whom God, like a trainer, has paired with a tough young buck. Imagine that for a moment, that you're wrestling a tough young deer. And what is the purpose? And this is important, guys, as we think through these challenges, particularly as leaders, what is the purpose of these challenges? When you think about the purpose of challenges in your life, what are the purpose of these difficult times that you find? Just chat that in here. Growth, make you stronger. Yep. Someone put in to give glory to God. That's pretty deep right there. Opportunity and growth, make us stronger moving forward. Excellent. I tell you, we've got the right perspective here, so I'm encouraged with that. This is what he says: to turn you into Olympic class material. Now think about that. Do you consider yourself an Olympic class leader? I'd like to say that the true times, the difficult times, reveal us, but then they're also there to hone us and to change us and to help us to get better. And this is a quote from Epictetus, a Greek Stoic. So my point in sharing these quotes is that times change, technology changes, situations change, human beings don't change, the human experience doesn't change. With that in mind, we really want to think about how we can navigate these turbulent times that we're in. For those of you who don't know me well, just a quick background. I've been working with construction companies since 2004. If you want to learn more about me in terms of my clients and what they have to say about me, go to my website, ericanderton.com/clients. And then here's what one client says about working with me. One thing that stood out with Eric was his knowledge of construction and being familiar with specific terms, terms specific to our field. Eric knows the terms and understands the ins and outs of a construction business. It was much easier for us to communicate and achieve the results we were looking for. Our time with Eric was of great value. I have no hesitation in recommending Eric Anderton to others. And that's Greg Hall, the CEO of Tilton Pacific. We recently did a strategic planning session with him that was extremely helpful. Okay, so here's the ideal. Bid, build, plan, bill, right? You get the work, you plan it, you build it, and then you get paid for it. That's the ideal. But right now, the reality of construction is different. We know that there's multifaceted, there's uncertainties, there's unknowns, many people are involved, and there's things that you have no control over, some control over, total control over. And then we have this current situation that we're in. So we all know, I don't even have to ask you that. We have no control over the crisis from a macro perspective, right? We didn't ask for the coronavirus. It came upon us. It's had a significant impact upon all of our businesses, and we are where we are right now. And one of the things that you have to do as a leader is identify the things that you have no control over, some control over, and total control. So let's get a little more feedback from you guys. What are some of the things at the moment that you know you have complete control over? How we communicate, that's excellent. Marketing strategies, thank you. Dave, my attitude, thank you very much. This is great. Our own reaction, yep. My actions, staying calm. The amount of time we contingency plan, yes, excellent. Thank you very much. Excellent. Mindset, attitude, decision-making, very good. These are all excellent. Keeping informed, being bold, yep. How I handle things from home, yeah, that's very good, Jared, very good. Okay, excellent. So this is key. There's so many things that we don't have control over. And again, like I was chatting with my wife earlier today, it's easy to get anxious over things that we have no control over. And it's normal to get anxious over those things. We have to do the best to discipline ourselves as leaders so that we focus in on the things that we have control over. So think back 20 years ago. What are some of the major events that have impacted the United States or even the world in the last 20 years? I think, of course, 9/11, 2001. I don't know about you, but I know exactly where I was sitting. I was sitting in my kitchen in this tiny little apartment. I wasn't married yet. I didn't have kids. I was working, and I got a phone call from my mom, typical mom reaction. Here I am in Sacramento, California. She's asking me if I'm okay. You know, I'm like, okay, what? Okay, because of what? And then she told me about the situation. Obviously, that was a massive event. Then 2008, we had the financial crisis in 2008. I remember one of the conversations I had in 2008, my buddy built a very successful copier business. I worked with him in that business for a number of years. He sold it the week before the financial crisis hit. So I'm sure you remember 9/11. I'm sure you remember the 2008 crisis. Let me ask you this. What were some of the biggest leadership lessons for you guys? Maybe not all of you remember 9/11 in terms of your business life. I'm sure that most of you do in terms of 2008 to one degree or another. What were some of the biggest lessons you've learned in your leadership in the past 20 years? Why don't you chat that into the box real quick? Work extra hard. That's great. That's excellent. Vision is important in times of crisis. Yep. Lead by knowledge of the facts. Think about the lessons that you've learned. Okay. Think about how you might be able to use and apply those lessons in the current circumstance. And I do think this, guys, is that we are still in such a realm of uncertainty. It's early days as far as the crisis is concerned. We may look back 90 days from now and think, wow, that was way overblown. And we may look back 90 days from now and say, wow, I'm glad that we made the steps that we took at that particular time. So we're still in this area of unknown. And so as we navigate these waters that we're in, it's so important that we have the right perspective. And when you compare those three events, for instance, obviously in many ways, we're dealing with apples and oranges, okay? They're not all exactly the same, but you can look back and you can think about how you responded and how you reacted and how others did, and think about drawing lessons from those responses. Because a few things are timeless as far as reacting and responding to crisis is concerned. Number one, it's so important to be calm in the midst of crisis. Number two, it's vital to be optimistic in the midst of a crisis. And then thirdly, this is the key right here. We have to be able to think clearly so that we can be proactive and we can make decisions and hopefully seize opportunities. And those are the three things we're going to be talking about here today during this session. How to stay calm when others are anxious, how to cultivate and project optimism in the midst of changing circumstances, and how to adopt a growth mindset, solving problems, building plans, and seizing opportunities in uncertain environments. Let's just dive right in here. We're going to be really focused around this idea of a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. And I want to break this down because it's so important for us as leaders to have a growth mindset. And I want to emphasize, you can tell I'm real pumped up about this, but I think it's so vital. Your example right now is so huge. People are looking to you for leadership. People are looking to you, and they're going to be responding and reacting in accordance with the way you respond and react. The way you show up as a leader in the next 30, 60, or 90 days, even in the way that you've shown up in the past 30 days, is going to be absolutely essential. And if you're looking back in the last few weeks and you're thinking, man, I really need to upgrade my game as a leader, there's good news, because there's always time for us to change our behavior and to be able to really step up as leaders. So let me just describe to you what a fixed mindset looks like. I'm only good at certain things. I give up when things get too hard. I hate challenges. I take feedback and criticism personally. I don't like doing what I don't know. Okay? Now think about that fixed mindset here. How far is that fixed mindset going to get you in the current situation that you face? It's not going to get you very far, but it's normal for people to think like this. I'm only good at certain things. I remember when I was in school, I was a terrible student in many classes, not because I was stupid, but I had fixed in my mind that I'm only good at English and history and I suck at everything else. So think about, as you go into this unknown circumstance that you're in, these uncertain waters, and you're charting them as a leader, you're going to have to step up probably and learn new things and think about things in different ways and really take on some challenges that perhaps you haven't taken on before. And that's why it's vital to have a growth mindset. And the growth mindset is this: failure is an opportunity to grow. And this is taken from, by the way, from a book called Mindset by an author called Carol Dweck. And it's a great book. I encourage you to check that book out. Failure is an opportunity to grow. I can learn to do anything that I want. You may be looking at things that you've got to learn to do in the next 30 days that you haven't done before. You can do anything that you want if you set your mind to it. Challenges help you to grow. My effort and attitude determine my abilities. Feedback is constructive. And right now, you might be getting some pretty tough feedback from the market, from your employees, on the jobs that you're working. You might be getting struck up the head with a 2x4 as far as the feedback is concerned. I encourage you to take that as something which is constructive. And I'm inspired by the success of others. And that's what I'm looking to do here a little bit here today, is to think through some of the successes that others have found in the midst of challenges and difficulties, and for us to draw inspiration from that to help us as we move forward as leaders. So think about that. What are you projecting to your folks today? Are you projecting that fixed mindset or that growth mindset? It's essential that you adopt that growth mindset. And here's another one right here. I like to try new things. I like to try new things. You're going to have opportunities to do things that you've never done before in the next 30, 60, or 90 days. Let's talk about the first thing that we want to dive in here today, how to stay calm when others are anxious. So let me ask you this. What are you doing at the moment to maintain a sense of calm in the midst of storm? Let's get some feedback from folks. I trust that that's a joke about drinking heavily. Let me just encourage you, let's not be medicating our way through this crisis, okay? It's not going to help. Constantly communicating, that's great. Thinking before speaking, excellent. Meditation, yep, I tell you. Pray and meditate, that's great. Stay informed and offer options. Yes, reminding the team how we performed in 2008 and 2009. That is a great way to stay calm. Friends, we may not have been in this exact situation before, but we've been in a place like this before. So let's see how we can work through this. So let me give you some ideas here. This is what Viktor Frankl says. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. And if you don't know about Viktor Frankl, I'm going to tell you a little bit about him here just a little bit later on. But I really like this. It's one of my favorite leadership quotes, because in the midst of the storms, you've got to get into this space where you can think through what you're going to do. And between the stimulus that you're receiving constantly and the choices that you make, you've got to get into that place of calm and that place of choosing so that you can think through what you're going to do. So you've got to be able to control your emotions. You've got to stay true to the things that drive you as an individual and as a company. And you need a framework to help you think through your leadership response. So I'd like to share that with you here. Controlling your emotions. Our natural tendencies when we're under pressure is to fight, it's to run away, or it's to waffle. And I do think that each one of those is not healthy, okay? I believe in fighting, by the way, in a healthy way. I believe in getting into the conflicts that we're in and really getting through them in a healthy way, but not in an out of control way. We don't want to fight in an out of control way. We don't want to run away, and we definitely don't want to waffle. So here are some tips for controlling your emotions. Number one, you got to take a deep breath. I know when I'm under pressure, one of the best things I can do is to take a deep breath. Just take a deep breath. And what that helps me to do is to separate my mind from the physical feelings of anxiety that I have, for whatever's causing those. The second one is to just keep my mouth shut, even if it's for a little bit of time, because my natural tendency is to get frustrated and then to speak. And once you speak, particularly in frustration, uncontrolled anger or anxiety, the words that you say typically are not very helpful. And then the next thing I do is this, and I was working through one of my clients with this this week, is start to think through the worst case scenario. Now, I know in terms of the virus that the worst case scenario for many people is very severe. People are losing their lives. And so I just like to think of it just from a business perspective, just for a moment. The worst case scenario from a business and even from a personal perspective. I was working with a gentleman who's a very successful project manager, and I was trying to help him to frame his leadership in a positive way. And I asked him, what was his worst case scenario? And so he went right to the point that he could lose his job. And that's something that many people are thinking about at the moment, particularly in a variety of industries, obviously, but of course in construction. People could lose their jobs. Maybe folks in the field are already laid off, but people in the office, if you don't have jobs that are running, people in the office, estimators, project managers, project engineers, they could all be laid off. So I asked him, if you got laid off, what would you do? And it's funny, he said to me, I'm going to go fishing. And I said, you're going to go fishing? And he says, yes, because I have enough money in the bank right now where I don't need to go out and immediately find a job. And I found this interesting because he was working through the worst case scenario. And by working through the worst case scenario, he understood that barring obviously him getting sick or a relative getting sick or something like that, the worst case scenario is that he would lose his job. And that kind of freed him up, because having thought through the worst case scenario, he could then say, okay, well, if that happens, I'm prepared for it. And now I can focus all of my energies at the task at hand, which is leading my people and helping them through these turbulent times. So breathing, speaking slowly, thinking through worst case scenarios, those are all very important. The next thing you need to do is you need to stay true to your own personal vision for your career. I tell you, the things that are rocked in these times, or the things that are tested, are our vision and our values. In other words, why we exist and how we behave. And you've got to ask yourself, will those things, those foundations in my life, are they going to be shaken, or will they stand true and allow me to navigate through the challenges that I'm facing? And then I also want to encourage you to stay true to the contribution that you make. So in your leadership, what do you think is the main contribution that you can make in your organization at the moment in terms of your leadership? What's that edge that you bring that's going to make a difference in the crisis that we're going through? Working harder. Fletcher, thank you for your honesty. Clear thinking and execution. Being available. That's excellent. It's so vital to be calm. Confidence. Very good. Excellent. Let me share something with you that is keeping me in the midst of all of this. And that's a credo that I've run my business on for many years. And it's something that I try and stick to all of the time, and it really helps me. Number one is low overhead. Now, a month ago, maybe low overhead wasn't that important to us in construction. But right now, our overhead is absolutely critical. And especially in uncertain times, we've got to do a hard look at all of our overhead and make sure it's as low as possible. The next one is stay humble. And what I mean by that is this. Good times and bad times are like imposters in our lives, right? And they look at us in the eye, and they cause us to get too proud when things are going good, or too downcast when things are going bad. And I want to encourage us, let's stay humble through this, right? We don't know what tomorrow holds, but we do have today. And today we can have an attitude of commitment, an attitude of hard work, an attitude of doing whatever is necessary. And that's what I think a humble attitude is. It's not one that gets too high. It's not one that gets too low. It's one that's willing to do whatever is necessary to take my company through the challenging times that I'm in. And then the last one is, it's not what I make, it's what I keep. And I just want to encourage you here today. What is it that you can preserve through these challenging times? There's things that perhaps you may need to change, but there's things that you need to preserve. So no matter what happens, just chat this into the box for me. What's one thing that is not going to change for you no matter what happens in the next 30, 60, or 90 days? Okay, Dave, family, that's great. Rob, persistent focus on new business. John, my love for my family, that's excellent. Job continuity, customer service approach, doing the right thing. This is beautiful. This is beautiful. You need that compass to help you to stay true when the storms are tossing you around. Okay, so let's just keep going here. You need to use a framework to help you to get into that place of calm and to think through the things that you're going through. And you need to be able to get clarity on what's most important right now so that you can take action. So I'm going to give you a simple framework here that I use with my clients, and it's the 90-day leadership dashboard. And I want you to think through very carefully through this. What's the one thing that has to happen in the next 90 days? And perhaps 90 days is too long right now. Maybe it's just the next week. What's the one thing that has to happen in the next week for you to be able to say you had a good week? And then think through the initiatives that you need to execute in your particular area of responsibility. And what are the performance metrics that you need to track? Now, more than ever, knowing your metrics and tracking your metrics is fundamental. What are the key relationships that you need to work on? Who are the key people within your organization that you need to build strong relationships with? Who are the key relationships that you need to work on outside of your organization? Perhaps it's with your banker. Perhaps it's with your key clients. Who are those key relationships? And then what are your top development opportunities? What is one thing you want to learn in the next 30, 60, or 90 days that is going to help you to grow as an individual? How are you going to come forth like gold from the difficulties and the challenges that you're facing at the moment. And the reason why I shared Viktor Frankl's quote is that he wrote that idea of between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. And much of his thinking was shaped by his experience in the concentration camps during World War II. He was in Auschwitz. And what's interesting is that he came out of that with a book that he wrote called Man's Search for Meaning. And if you haven't read it, I encourage you to read it. It had an impact on over 10 million people. Over 10 million copies of that book have been sold. And it's a tremendously profound book because it focuses on the trials and the difficulties that we go through. And the main message that I get from the book when I read it is that we as human beings, we have a dignity within us, no matter the difficulties of the circumstances that are outside of us. And we can maintain that dignity. And that's where our significance as human beings comes from. And so I want to encourage you through the midst of these tribulations and difficulties that you're going through, what's being worked in you can have a tremendous positive impact, not only on you, but also on other people. All right, so now I want to look at this idea of how to cultivate and project optimism in the midst of changing circumstances. So let me ask you here, how would you define high energy future thinking? Very good. Looking positively to see, hopeful, yes. Positive thoughts, I like that. Hopeful, excellent. This is really good. Let's dive into this idea of how to cultivate and project optimism. There's some people who have this idea that everything is awesome and they have that sort of bounciness to them, which I just can't understand. But then there's other people who are apathetic and depressed and pessimistic. And then there's people like Winston Churchill. I tell you, Winston Churchill is one of my favorites. And a recent biography by a guy named Andrew Roberts. It's called Churchill Walking with Destiny. Andrew Roberts. I encourage you to check it out. It's a really good one because it doesn't like pump him up as some sort of superhero, and neither does it like critique him too much, but it's a very balanced account of Winston Churchill. And I like him because I really look at him as a realistic optimist. And so let me just give you some ideas here. This is what he said in May 1940 when he became prime minister. He was giving a speech in the House of Commons. We are in the preliminary stage of one of the greatest battles in history. I would say to the House, like I said, as I said to those who have joined this government, I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat. We have before us an ordeal of the most grievous kind, as Britain was faced with the potential of a German invasion. We have before us many, many long months of struggling and suffering. You ask, what is our policy? I will say it is to wage war by sea, land, and air with all our might and with all the strength that God can give us, to wage war against a monstrous tyranny, never surpassed in the dark and lamentable catalog of human crime. That is our policy. You ask, what is our aim? I can answer in one word, victory. Victory at all costs, victory in spite of all terror. Victory, however long and hard the road may be, for without victory, there is no survival. Churchill was very much a realistic optimist. And the one thing that I like is this. He told people the truth. I have nothing to offer you but blood, toil, and tears. And in the midst of the difficulties that we're going through right now, you have to tell yourself the truth. You have to be able to tell other people the truth. They're looking to you as a leader to tell them the truth about what's going on. And I just want to encourage you. Your people aren't dumb. You know that. Your people aren't dumb. They know the truth. You need to be able to tell them the truth. You also need to be able to lay out a clear plan. And you may not be able to lay out a definitive plan that will never change, but you need to give them some policy, some direction. And then you need to give them a goal. And that goal may be changing, or the plan may change as you go through the process. But you have to be able to think through it now and lay it out in clear terms. And that's why it's critical that you have a leadership framework that you can use to project optimism to the people in your organization. And so for you to be an optimist, you have to grasp the truth. You have to set out a policy. and you have to have a clear goal. And then you need to project that optimism to other people in your organization. And so let me give you a framework for that. And this is the ear framework. And so just for a moment, grab your right ear. And I know this is a little bit cheesy, but just grab it. Now think about the ear. Your people are listening to hear messages from you that can encourage them. If you think about how Churchill had a massive impact upon people simply by what he communicated and by his demeanor, you as a leader have a massive impact on people by how you communicate and through your demeanor. And so think about the way that ear is spelt. E-A-R. And so let me break it down for you. These are the three messages that you must communicate to your people at this time in order to project optimism. The first one is encouragement. You have to look them in the eye and encourage them that we are going to do everything within our power to get through this present circumstance. The next word is accountability. And this is critical. You may have been a little loose with accountability over the past couple of years as you were just doing whatever you could to build the work that you had. Now is the time to really lock in with accountability. When you communicate direction to someone, you have to hold them accountable and ask them, did you do it? Accountable messages are extremely important. And then you can never forget recognition. In the midst of all of the challenges that we're going to face in the next few months, you must be consistent in recognizing the efforts and the contributions of people in your organization. So encouragement, accountability, recognition, that's how you're going to be able to communicate that optimism to people in your organizational chart. Think about the people who are reporting to you at the moment. I tell you, now is the time to think about those direct reports and to ask yourself, who needs encouragement? Who needs accountability? Who needs recognition? What are the conversations that I need to have in the next week that are going to have the biggest impact? Who needs to be sat down and looked in the eye and said, listen, in the next 30 days, I need you to step up. I need you to take these actions. I need you to be accountable for this particular initiative. I believe that you can do it. I'm going to give you every piece of support that you need in order to do it, but you must get out there and you must execute. Your job as a leader is to give them that encouragement, that accountability, and that recognition. So if you need to remember the messages that you need to communicate in order to be an effective leader, it's those three messages. Grab your ear and just remember how it's spelt, E-A-R, encouragement, accountability, and recognition. Okay, let's get on to the last part of the training here today. How to adopt a growth mindset, how to solve problems, build plans, and seize opportunities in uncertain environments. We got to get good at problem solving, building plans, seize opportunities. There's many different opportunities that we can lay hold of in the midst of these challenges, and we've got to be able to get into action. The fact is that we all have problems. All of us now have problems in our business, perhaps that we didn't have just a few weeks ago. And that means that we have to be able to get into meetings with our people and go through a problem-solving process. The challenge with a lot of these problem-solving meetings and crisis meetings is that you don't really get buy-in, and as a result of that, there's failure. And so I want to share with you now a meeting process that I've used with my clients for years to help them in times of challenge to address their problems, get ideas from their teams, and then build action plans. So first you have to be able to identify your problems and have a clear, repeatable process to work through them so that you get everyone's buy-in and you get into action. And when you put those together, getting clarity, buy-in, and action, that's where you can begin to get towards some success. Okay, so before you go into one of those meetings, you really have to do a bit of pre-meeting prep, though. You've got to think through and identify the problems, gather the team, and then make the rules for the meeting. And this is really, really important. So you've got to get honest. You've got to get honest. What is the biggest challenge that you're facing at the moment? And the truth may hurt, but burying your head in the sand is not a strategy. And saying suck it up is not a strategy either. All progress begins by telling the truth. So you got to look at your numbers. You've got to combine that with your conversations to identify the problems that you're facing. Then you've got to gather the team. And I want to encourage you. There's no time for people who are just going to agree with you on whatever you think as a leader. Gather the team, get your leadership in, get the specialists and the geeks in, whatever the case may be. Get people in the meeting that you perhaps don't think should be in the meeting most of the time, but you know they may have a perspective that you may not naturally like, but you need to hear. Make sure you get a diverse group of people in that meeting. Understand that you need those different perspectives. So think of your company as a beach ball. You're on the yellow segment of the beach ball, and all you see is yellow. It's a big beach ball. Someone else is on the blue segment of the beach ball. They see blue, but you guys are still on the same beach ball. And you have to be able to bring together those different perspectives. And then you've got to set the rules for the meeting. Number one, everyone's got to participate. No more time for hanging out on social media during the meetings. It's time to participate. There's no belittling of any ideas. Every idea is on the table, and you're willing to take a look at what those ideas and get feedback from everyone. Everyone's got to participate. So don't be distracted. Be wholehearted. No belittling of ideas. We've got to work together as a team to look at these challenges that we face and seize the opportunities. Okay, what's your biggest challenge that you're facing in the next week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks? Let me give you a way of framing the challenge just by looking at these questions here. In what specific ways can we improve our hit rate? In what specific ways can we improve production? In what specific ways can we improve safety? Think about that question right now. For those of you who are on job sites where you're still running work and you've really got to think about safety, the safety of everyone involved. Perhaps that's the one thing that you need to get together with your people with in the next week, if you haven't already, and say this: in what specific ways can we improve safety? The framing of the question is very important. What you do is you frame it in this way. You say, in what specific ways, and then you put the problem in. Can we improve safety? Or can we function more effectively as a leadership team? What do you think the key word in that questioning framework is? Just chat that into the box. What's the key word in that questioning framework? Just chat that in. Rob chats in specific. Yeah, Dave weighs. John specific, Lisa specific. The most important word here, guys, is specific, because you have to get specific if you're going to be able to solve your problems. Okay? So once you've framed it, then what you want to be able to do is you want to give everyone in the room who's participating in the meeting 2 minutes to write down as many ideas as they can come up with to how to solve this problem. And again, if you stick around to the end, I'm going to send you an ebook on exactly how to run this framework that I'm talking about. So you don't worry if you miss a couple of things here. I'll send you the book and you can have that framework. Okay, so you give them 2 minutes to write out as many ideas as they can come up with in light of how to solve the problem. And then after that 2 minutes, you ask them to narrow their list of ideas down to their top two. Top two ideas after they've been writing for 2 minutes. Then the next thing you want to do is you want to be able to gather those ideas. And this is where your skills as a facilitator come in. And this is one of the critical things of being a leader in times like this. You're going to get different perspectives. You're going to get different opinions. People in the meetings are going to be in different places. Some will be more excited. Some will be more calm. Some people will think the world's coming to an end. Some people will be rubbing their hands together saying, let's get after it. You've got to have skill as a leader to listen carefully, to be patient with people as they share their ideas, and to gather those ideas from the people in the room who are involved in solving the problems. So get yourself a sticky back pad or a whiteboard, get yourself some pens, get everybody involved, and do this. Get a list of of the ideas that people have. And this is an actual literal list from one of my clients of how they were going to improve quality in the field. And we came up with 15 ideas, and we narrowed it down to some specific ideas on how they're going to be able to overcome the challenge that they face. And you notice these red marks here. These are the votes that people did. So we got a list of the ideas, and then we voted. We voted on which were the top ideas. So everybody got to weigh in order to narrow that list down. And then once you've narrowed the list down from everyone participating, what you do then is you identify the most valuable idea. the most important idea. And if you use this process, you will identify probably 1 to 2 ideas, and you pick that as your most important idea for overcoming the challenge. And this helps you to overcome just a bunch of blah, 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 right? Because you have a meeting and you get some good vibes and then you do nothing. And that's why it's important that you take that most important idea, most valuable idea, and you build your action plan. So let's talk about that. An action plan should have 3 parts to it: a rally cry, areas of fierce focus, and then critical numbers. And so let me walk you through that. What about the rally cry? A rally cry is something that you can be woken up at 3:30 in the morning and someone asks you, what's the most important thing that you've got to achieve? And you can just nail it with a simple phrase, okay? So think about D-Day, 1944, when they were invading the beaches. When they were invading the beaches, the American and the British troops, what do you think the rally cry was for those invading the beaches in 1944? It was to beat Germany. What's your rally cry right now? Type that into the box, just based on what you're faced with at the moment. What's the rally cry that you're focused on in your business right now? Keep calm, provide jobs. This is great. Excellent. Keep everyone healthy. That's excellent. Move forward. Very good. Excellent feedback here. Notice how all of these things are clear. All of them, I'm assuming when you type them into the box, you understand them. There's no doubt about what they are. It's so important to have that clear rally cry. And so beat Germany was the rally cry for the Allies. And so you take your most valuable idea, the one thing that you're working on, the one thing that you have to achieve, and you make that your rally cry. And then you have to have areas of fierce focus in order to achieve the rally cry. So if they were going to beat Germany, this is a map of the advance across France and Germany from the Allies and the Russians. If you're going to beat Germany, you've got to identify specific targets, specific towns. You've got to take care of logistics. You have a variety of different things that you have to execute in order to achieve the rally cry. And those are your areas of fierce focus. And then you've got to have critical numbers. In other words, metrics that tell you whether or not you're driving your areas of fierce focus in order to achieve your rally cry. Okay? Now, if you don't take time for this, your problems aren't going to go anywhere. So this is what a one-page plan looks like very simply. You put the rally cry at the top, you have your areas of fierce focus, and then you have your critical numbers related to each area of fierce focus to help you to drive your rally cry. And here's an example. One of my clients, one of their rally cries was kill bad jobs. And to kill bad jobs, they had to identify scope, estimate cost to complete, and then do production planning. That's how they were going to kill the bad jobs. And this is the numbers that were related to that. And they were dates. They weren't metrics, but they were dates. And dates or metrics are very appropriate in this situation. So they had to do the scope by 9/30, the cost to complete by October 14th, and draft production by 10/14. This is how they were going to kill bad jobs. So once you get in the room with your folks, once you identify your problem, once you come up with one idea that you're going to execute on in order to overcome the problem, you've got to be able to build a simple plan that you can hold people accountable for. And this is what Patton says: a good plan violently executed now is far better than a perfect plan next week. And that's the truth, guys. There's no perfect plan right now because we're in the unknowns. A good plan violently executed is far better than a perfect plan next week. And the good news is this: when the stimulus comes in, you should get into free discussion with your folks. Reach a clear decision, expect full support, and then respond. And if you're wrong, you just go right back up to the top and have free discussion again. This is the great news here. We've got to make decisions. We've got to take action. But we want to make sure that we're always evaluating our action, evaluating our decisions, and making sure that we're staying flexible, making sure that we're nimble, making sure that we're doing whatever we can to correct the mistakes that we make as we begin to navigate more thoroughly through the challenging situation that we're in. Okay, so those are the 3 things we've covered here today: how to stay calm, how to cultivate and project optimism, and how to solve problems, build plans, and seize opportunities in uncertain environments. So, me and my kids, we were watching Lord of the Rings a couple of weeks ago. And man, that's a good movie. That thing stood up over time. Here's a quote from Gandalf. I wish it need not have happened in my time, said Frodo. Now, Gandalf's coming in a minute. So do I, said Gandalf. And so do all who live to see such times. But that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us. And let me just encourage you. There's so much in our lives we don't control, but you've been given this opportunity in the place that you're in the company that you're in, with the people who work with you and for you. And you have to decide what you're going to do with the time that is given to you. And I tell you this, victory is not guaranteed. There are no guarantees in life. You know that. There's a couple, but victory isn't one of them. Success, failure, they come, they go. The only thing that we can do as leaders right now is to think through, what can I do to control myself, to build plans to overcome the challenges I'm facing in the midst of these difficult circumstances, to project optimism, to be an example of someone that others can look to and take energy and even comfort from. What can I do to encourage people? What can I do to hold them accountable? How can I recognize others as I'm going through this difficult time? And remember, you can have a fixed mindset or you can have a growth mindset. I know many of you here on the call today, I deeply value the relationships that we've built over the years. Those of you who I don't know well, I'm here as a resource for you. We're here together to get through this. If you need an ear to bend, if you need someone to talk to, if you need a sounding board, this is what I do with my clients all day long. Think through these challenging situations and think about how we can move forward, even in the midst of uncertainty, and really solve the problems and address the challenges that we face. So you're welcome to contact me. Really appreciate your time here. Thanks for joining us.